Envy is the one emotion almost nobody will ever confess to. Anger gets admitted. Sadness gets shared. Even jealousy, in its more romantic forms, gets acknowledged. But envy, that specific, corrosive feeling of wanting what someone else has while quietly resenting them for having it, almost never makes it into an honest conversation. Because admitting envy requires admitting something most people find unbearable: that someone else's life is making them feel inadequate about their own. So instead of admitting it, envious people do something far more complicated. They perform, they disguise, they redirect. And the 7 things they never admit are not just interesting psychology. They are the hidden architecture of some of the most confusing and painful dynamics you have ever experienced in your relationships. The first thing they never admit is that your success genuinely bothers them. Not because they dislike you. Often because they like you fine, and that makes it worse. The discomfort of feeling diminished by someone you actually care about is deeply confusing. So it gets repackaged into concern for your well-being, into warnings about your choices, into a sudden interest in pointing out the risks of everything going well for you. The admission that your win triggered something uncomfortable in them never arrives. The symptoms of it do. The second thing they never admit is that the criticism they offer is actually about them. When an envious person tells you that your idea won't work, that your relationship seems unstable, that your success is probably temporary, they are not offering analysis. They are externalizing a feeling. The criticism is a projection of their own fear that those things would not work for them. Admitting that would require a level of self-awareness that envy specifically tends to block. The third thing they never admit is that they are measuring themselves against you constantly. Every conversation is data. Every update on your life gets quietly calibrated against where they are. They are running a comparison in real time, and they would never say so out loud, because acknowledging the comparison means acknowledging that they feel they are losing it. So the measurement continues invisibly while the conversation stays surface level. The fourth thing they never admit is that your happiness actually affects their mood. There are people in your life whose energy noticeably shifts when things go well for you. Not dramatically, subtly, a cooling, a slight withdrawal, a flatness that replaces warmth. They would never say that your good news made them feel worse, but the behavioral evidence is consistent enough that if you track it over time, the pattern becomes undeniable. The fifth thing they never admit is that they want to be you, or at least want what you have. On some level, they find deeply uncomfortable. This is the core of envy, and it is the most protected secret of all. Wanting someone else's life, even partially, feels like a confession of failure, so it gets suppressed, redirected, and eventually expressed as the very criticism, dismissal, or distance that you experience as confusing behavior from someone who claims to care about you. The sixth thing they never admit is that they feel guilty about how they feel. Most envious people are not proud of their envy. They experience shame about it. They know on some level that it is not a generous feeling. And that shame, rather than motivating honesty, tends to drive the feeling deeper underground, where it becomes harder to see and harder to resolve. The guilt about the envy becomes additional weight that makes the whole thing even harder to process or release. The seventh thing they never admit is that the distance they've created is their own doing. When envy becomes unsustainable, some people simply withdraw. They become less available, less warm, less present. And if you ever ask what happened, the explanation will have nothing to do with what is actually happening. Because admitting that your growth made them pull away would require them to say something they have not yet found the courage to say to themselves. Here is the truth that matters most. Envy is almost always a grief in disguise. It is the pain of wanting something deeply and believing, rightly or wrongly, that it belongs to someone else's life and not yours. So here is the question worth sitting with today. Have you ever felt something for someone else's life that you were not willing to call envy? And what were you actually calling it instead?